Today, I'm joined by Zak Hanshew from Roto World, NBC Sports, whatever we want to call it. We're going over our early industry mock draft from earlier in the week. Let's go, balls deep.
I could bet all of the riches that I ever had.
Welcome to the Balls Deep Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Basketball International. I'm Adam King. You can find me on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it, at AdamKing91. Our website is fbibasketball.com. All of our leagues over there, all of our dynasty stuff, our content, which is still churning out today. As I said, I am joined by Zak Hanshew. Zak, are you calling it X or are you calling it Twitter?
I'm calling it Twitter still. I can't really get behind the X right now, but I'm slow to change, man. So eventually I will I will change.
Yeah, I'm still going with Twitter, even though my phone tells me it's called X now. All the logos and everything's been updated. So, but I'm still going with Twitter. As I said, we are going to go over our mock draft that we did. Dr. A and I hosted the show earlier in the week. You were one of the 12 analysts in the draft very early, 3 months until the start of the season. So, I mean, take from this what you will. Obviously, a lot can change. Let me bring up my little slides here and I don't need two logos up there. One is enough. So we're going to go round by round. A few of you had reached out to me just saying that the fonts and the text was a little bit small when we did the live show because it was simply the fan tracks, the draft room. So I've made some slides here, hopefully a little bit easier to read. There we go. All right. And I don't know what the red looks like here. I've highlighted your players in red just to remind me and to remind you of who you picked. First round, actually been a bit of chatter about first round on Twitter over the last few days. So we'll start there. I'll just recap the picks really quickly and then we'll have a chat about your pick and maybe if we have a favourite pick. Nikola Jokic went at 1, no surprise, followed by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, LaMelo Ball, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Trae Young. Now, you were at pick 6 and you picked Jason Tatum. I'm assuming you were hoping with all fingers crossed, toes crossed, that Tyrese was going to fall to you here, and he didn't. But you took Jason Tatum. Pretty safe to me. Thoughts on Jason Tatum here?
Yeah, man, it was I had some choice words for B-Dub that I chose to kind of keep to myself. Yeah, I played it safe with Tatum. I didn't want to reach for anybody here. Tatum is a pretty secure pick here at number 6. Even with Jaylen Brown getting that $300 million deal, Tatum is going to be the guy. He's going to have a ton of usage. He's going to rack up a ton of those stats that you want to see across the board. It felt safe. In this first round, I think Curry at 10 was a pick that was a pretty decent value. I thought Lillard at 11, pretty decent value. LaMelo at 9 felt like a reach. I know you're high on him, but that's a bit high for me, just with the injury history and maybe some guys coming back like a Miles Bridges or Brandon Miller that they drafted. So that one felt like maybe a bit of a reach. I can't see him getting into the top 12 this year, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, I pretty much agree there. I think for me, I mean, Jokic is going to go number 1. I don't see any leagues where he doesn't go number 1. I think 2 to 6, those 5 guys there that we've got from 2 to 6 are pretty much a lock to be 2 to 6 at the moment. In some sort of order, Shai at 2 is I mean, that's a little bit higher for me, but if you want him, you grab him there. I've actually moved Tatum up to 3 or 4, I think, in my rankings. Luka at 3. So Tatum is the obvious one there for me at 6. And then I think the bottom half, again, you could shuffle those guys up. You could take Steph at 7. Trae Young is an interesting one there for me at 12. I don't have him in my top 12. Let me either. So I've actually got Anthony Davis in my top 12. So I swap him in there. But looking at the second round, and your pick is one that we really want to talk about. We had Anthony Davis at 13, followed by Domantas Sabonis, Jaren Jackson, James Harden, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Victor Wembanyama, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, Mikal Bridges, Walker Kessler, and Desmond Bane. You took Victor at pick 19. My first question is, if this was a real draft, would you have taken him?
It's still a maybe. I mean, I reached a little bit here because I know in drafts where you're with other analysts and guys that you kind of know are going to reach a little bit for some of their guys, you do have to play that game a little bit. And I've drafted with you guys before, a lot of you. And honestly, man, this is still fantasy basketball, right? So we're still here to try to dole out some advice and try to, show people, hey, you could get value here. Don't draft this guy, draft this guy. But at the end of the day, this is all about fun, right? So, like, I took Tyrese Halliburton second overall in the Locked On Fantasy Basketball League that I was in last year with Josh Lloyd. And for guys like Victor, if you like him, if he's somebody that you're going to have fun rooting for and putting him on your team, reach up and grab him. I mean, this is all about having fun. If I want Halliburton, I'll reach a space for him. If I want somebody like a Chet Holmgren, I'll reach up and get him a little bit early. And I think a lot of people, in the fantasy that play fantasy hoops are going to have a similar mindset. I think if I wouldn't have grabbed Victor here, he wouldn't have made it back to me in round 3. I seriously doubt that he would have still been on the board.
Yeah, no, I'm fairly confident he wouldn't have been either. We obviously spoke whenever we did our analyst interview, which feels like quite a while ago. But I spoke to all the analysts about where they would like to get Victor this year, and it was sort of third round was where people were hoping, maybe the fourth. And I think it's already pretty clear that you're going to have to take him in the second if you want to get him. So, yeah, look, I'm fine taking him there. It probably is a bit of a reach, but as you said, he's not going to be there at whatever your next pick is, which is, mid-30s or early 30s, so 31 or something. So he's not going to be there then. So I'm fine with him. Everyone else here feels relatively safe. What are your thoughts on Walker Kessler at 23? Because I'm really high on Walker Kessler, but even 23 feels high. But again, whoever took him, I can't remember who had that pick, but he's not going to he's going to go off the board in the third round, I think. So is this too high for Walker Kessler?
Well, I mean, so this was Alex Burns, if I remember correctly. It was him or Noah, Noah Rubin. One of the two of them I know both are pretty high on Walker Kessler. I don't know that people are going to take him this high in drafts, but does he have this ceiling? I honestly believe he does. He was one of the top 5 players in blocks per game last season. We've seen from guys like a Jaren Jackson, like a Miles Turner in years past. If you can be the blocks leader and elevate yourself and separate that much more from the pack in terms of that very scarce category, you can elevate yourself all the way into that first round territory for fantasy hoops. So obviously Kessler, poor free throw percentage, doesn't shoot the threes. But if you're really excelling in that blocks category, field goal percentage, he did this all in, I think, 23 minutes per game last season. So he can obviously improve in points and rebounds with some extra minutes, which I'm sure he will get. So I think him finishing in that top 15 range is certainly not out of the question at all.
I think we've actually got a really good comparison even if we just look back to last year, Nick Claxton last year finished at 24th in 9 cat leagues, averaging 12.6 points, 9.2 rebounds, 2.5 blocks, 70% from the field. I think Kessler can do that. I don't see why he won't be a double-double with 2.5 blocks. And probably, what I'm just looking, I know Nick Claxton is really bad from the free throw line. Just having a look at what Kessler is. About
Kessler
the same.
was horrendous.
Yeah, so pretty similar. So, I mean, just looking at that, then, okay, maybe you take him here and maybe he finishes around this area. But as you said, blocks are such a swing category. You only need to draft 1 or 2 guys. And your team is actually a really good example of that. You've got, because I know your next few picks are guards, you only really picked 2 shot blockers, Wembanyama being one of them and another guy later in the draft. But just having 1 or 2 elite shot blockers makes you competitive in that category. You don't need to draft 3, 4, 5 guys that block shots. So we will go to the third round. So we had Jimmy Butler first off the board at 25, Fred VanVleet, Lauri Markkanen, Kyrie Irving, Bam Adebayo, DeJounte Murray, Pascal Siakam, LeBron James, Chet Holmgren, Cade Cunningham, Darius Garland, and Nikola Vucevic. DeJounte was your guy here. Pick 30. What was he last year? I got to look at what players were last
37
year.
last year in per game value.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, you went a little bit higher, but I think he'll be better this year. I don't think he can be worse. So this feels about right. Reasons for taking DeJounte here?
I needed a guard here, and he felt like the best available option. 37 last year. He was, top 12 guy 2 years ago, obviously, as the number 1 option for the Spurs. And he's sharing the backcourt with Trey. But as you mentioned, there's room for improvement for him this year. And when we're talking about 5 or 6 or 7 spots here, I think that's fairly inconsequential in terms of where we're drafting him compared to last year. So I felt like that was a pretty good value for me right here as my top guard, to get him in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I think so. And another elite guy in one of those low volume categories as well. So really solid for steals. He's going to make you competitive straight away. Getting him. Couple of guys I want to talk about here. Kyrie at 28. I think that's really good value. What are your thoughts on Kyrie this year?
I love that value right there. That was a guy that I was going to take if he hadn't already been grabbed. I was really eyeing him right there. And I really thought for sure DeJounte was going to get taken right after that. So fortunately, Bam went. But Kyrie, man, he's a guy that's going to he's going to give you 2nd round value. I think that's really his floor is that top 24 value, with top 12 baked in as well. Big part of that is going to be the 50, 40, 90 that he's going to push for in terms of shooting every season. He's going to give you elite field goal, free throw percentage. He shoots threes. He scores at a high volume, decent with rebounds, with steals, with assists. He doesn't really kill you too many places.
So we've got then a couple of guys who are, they're not rookies. Cade's definitely not a rookie. But thoughts on Cade at 34? I'm pretty high on him this year as well. And then the other guy there, Chet Holmgren, who went 1 pick ahead of him at 33, it's his 2nd season, but didn't play last season. So we're calling it his rookie season. Pretty high for Chet as well. I'd like to probably get him around later, but I think much like Wembanyama, he's one of those guys, if you want to get him, you have to grab him because he'll get hyped and he'll get built up as we approach the season. So do you like those guys there in this range?
Again, I'm fine with Chet there. Obviously, you'd like to get him later if you could, just given his uncertainty as a rookie, and we know, generally how rookies perform in terms of fantasy hoops. Getting all the way up to 33, if he finishes the season in that range, would be phenomenal. But again, he's a guy that you have to reach for, so I'm fine with it. I think he has the upside to get there. A guy like Cade Cunningham, I don't see the upside of him here. As a rookie, we saw some pretty good flashes. Obviously, started the season rough and finished pretty strong. I'm just not entirely sure that he can get anywhere close to this type of value, especially after Detroit has made some additional signings. And after he missed time last season, I think the injury risk is certainly a concern for me as well. What makes you so high on Cade for this season?
I don't know. I still think, I know Detroit have added some guys, but I still think he's their key piece. He's who they're building around. So he's going to have the ball. I'm not sure this season is the one where he breaks out. As you said, he basically had all of last year off. So that's going to impact it. I think he'll have the opportunity to just do basically whatever he wants to do. So I think his counting stats will be really good. I think he'll score. I think he'll get some assists, rebounds. Doesn't offer a ton on the defensive end. But I don't know. I like his opportunity. I think long-term dynasty, I'm pretty high on him. I managed to get him at pick 9, I think, in Noah's Tank Me Later draft. So I was pretty happy to get him at pick 9. I know some people were considering him at around pick 5 in that draft. So, I mean, I'm not a dynasty expert by any means, but I just like his opportunity. I just like his game. I think it might not be this year, which is why that's maybe a little bit high for me. But yeah, if you want him, take him. Next round. Oh, there we go. So 4th round. Pick 37, Paul George, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Evan Mobley, Zion Williamson, Kawhi Leonard, De'Aaron Fox, Brandon Ingram, Miles Turner, Jalen Brunson, Jamal Murray, and Drew Holiday. So De'Aaron Fox was your pick here. So you went back-to-back guards. Fox coming off, he was awesome last year. Finished as the 41st ranked player. So you're right in line with where he ended last season. I don't know. This feels really solid to me. What were you thinking here? Just sort of backing up. Man, I can't even think to the round before. Backing up DeJounte, getting another guard, getting some assists. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, I felt like shoring up the guard spot here. I had went to, forward/center in the first 2 rounds. I felt like shoring up the guard spot here. And I felt like, again, this was probably the best value on the board just based on how he performed last season. I was not a believer in him last season. You go back and look at the receipts. I was saying, man, he's being overdrafted. He's not going to live up to this hype. And, of course, he came out, and him and Sabonis just absolutely crushed it. And we all know they were lighting the beam every other night last season. So I think Fox can still improve this season or at least be as good as he was last season. So if I can get a guy, if he can play just like that again this season, him and DeJounte, I think, makes a great guard core for this team that I drafted.
So 2 picks ahead of you, Zion Williamson was taken at 41. He's going to be a guy that, there'll be a lot of discussion around where should we take him this season. Is he someone that you're interested in at all this season? And if so, would you go this high to get him?
No, if he falls into the 60s, I don't know that I'll be able to help myself. I think if he falls that far, knowing what his ceiling is, I would certainly bite. I really do. I think that would just be too much temptation. But drafting him this high, I don't think I'll have any part in him this season. I would really like to say that I won't. I have no problem with him. His whatever affairs or whatever pregnancy situation he's dealing with or all that Twitter stuff. Don't care. Don't care a bit about it, right? He's a young guy with money. He's going to make stupid decisions, and he's going to do what he's going to do. But I think kind of what it speaks to, though, is how's he investing his time? How's he investing his money? Is he taking care of his body? What's he doing in the off season? All of those kind of things on Twitter kind of paints him as a guy that maybe his focus is on things other than basketball right now. And a lot of the off season chatter, from the Pelicans kind of came to, well, are they going to trade him? Are they considering offers? I think just all that negative attention, he could either swing to be a guy that comes back and lets that fuel him and just comes out amazing, or he could just be a total bust and a dud, and this is his last season in New Orleans. And so just for that reason alone, I think I'm washing my hands this year.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of risk there. I mean, he was really good last season until he got injured, but the hamstring injuries don't usually take 3 months, 4 months. Like, he basically missed the whole 2/3 of the season. With it. And I mean, look, a significant hamstring injury, yes, like a hamstring torn off the bone, yes, but there was never any mention of that. They made it sound like it was a sort of a grade 2, 6 weeks, then he'll be back, then he re-aggravated it. I don't know. You never know what to believe, but yeah, look, he's someone that I really hope can turn things around and have a strong season, because I like the Pelicans. They looked awesome to start last season. They were right up the top of the standings in the Western Conference. So fingers crossed he can, but I think much like you, I'm a little bit hesitant to take him this early. 5th round, pick 49, OG Anunoby, Nick Claxton, Alperen Şengün, Jalen Williams, Bradley Beal, Ja Morant, DeMar DeRozan, Scotty Barnes, Zach LaVine, Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Kuzma, Chris Middleton. So you've gone 3 guards in a row. You've taken Ja Morant at 54. I think Doc and I spoke about this a little bit. I don't know, a fraction high, but I doubt he would be there the next round. So if you want him, you probably, like, I've got him at around 60. So not a huge reach. We know he's going to miss 25 games minimum this season. So basically that rules him out for the first 2 months, assuming he'll be back Christmas. I don't know the numbers exactly, but was this a reach for you, or is this sort of this is the range that you need to be grabbing him and you're happy with it?
Probably the range you need to be reaching at to get him. I guess this is dependent on your league and the guys you draft with. I was having a little bit of fun with this pick, but I think with DeJounte and Fox, I thought it would be a nice gamble to take Morant here. I think I can kind of weather the storm until he returns. I did not pick up Marcus Smart later in the draft, but I think if your stranger takes him at all, it's probably not a bad idea to include Marcus Smart a little bit later in your draft. And I just want to say, looking at this round here, I really, really like that Anunoby pick there at 49. I think he's a guy that could be, he has top 15 upside, really, with Van Vliet gone. If he can see a little more usage, just because of everything he does, especially with the steals, which is another, pretty valuable category along with blocks. I really, really like that value at 49. I think that was phenomenal.
There's a few guys in this round that I think you could spend 5 minutes talking about. Claxton at 50. I mean, like I said earlier, he was a second rounder last season. I don't really see his role changing. Maybe he drops back a little bit, but he could still very well be a top 30 guy. Şengün at 51. What are your thoughts on him this season? Because he's, again, one of those polarizing kind of guys that some people are really high on and some people just think he's not a waste of space, but he doesn't fit what they're doing in Houston. He doesn't fit their fast tempo. So is he someone that you're sort of targeting this season, or are you going to just leave him for someone else?
Yeah, I'll leave him. And part of that is, obviously recency bias. I think he got overdrafted last year by me and others, and failed to live up to some of the hype we were presenting him as like a Sabonis or a Jokic Jr. with his ability at things. I think just Houston's offseason moves maybe kind of show you that they are not fully committed to giving him a ton of minutes. They started last season giving, guys like Bruno Fernando, a ton of minutes at center, which made no sense to me. So, I'm gonna leave him for somebody else to draft and be their headache.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think obviously they haven't made any changes in the center spot, but the fact that they were going after Brook Lopez, that it is a bit of a red flag that they aren't as high on Şengün as some fantasy managers are. 6th round, Jordan Poole, Jarrett Allen, Josh Giddey, Brook Lopez, Jabari Smith, DeAndre Ayton, Rudy Gobert, Paolo Banchero, Derek White, Julius Randle, Anthony Simons, and CJ McCollum. So this is the second guy that I alluded to earlier that you took. So you've now got Wemby and Rudy Gobert. Simply by having those two guys, you'd have to be one of the top 3 teams in blocks, I would think, with only 2 players. So I really like Gobert here. I think he was obviously overdrafted last year, but he was top 60-ish. So I can't see him being any worse than he was last season. I know Towns wasn't there, which people will say, well, Towns wasn't there, so Gobert played a lot more and had more of an opportunity, but I'm not sure that's actually the case. I think having Towns there might help Gobert a little bit. So I don't know. I like Gobert here. What are your thoughts?
Absolute steal. I think people are, very low on him after what happened last season. He was still a double-double, with plenty of blocks. And as you mentioned, with him and Wemby, still going to be competitive. And to get a guy that can get me 2 blocks this late in a draft, to me, I think is just a no-brainer. So I really like this pick here. I shored up my center position, and I feel like at this point through the draft, my core team has really, kind of formed up here.
So, a few safe guys here, I think. The one guy I want to talk about, and I know there's a few analysts out there who are very high on him, Derek White at 69. He is going to be starting for Boston. That has been announced since we did the draft, I think, but we all assume that anyway. Is Derek White someone you're as high on as I think, is it Alex Burns? Someone is really high on him. Are you is he going to be one of your guys this year, or
Noah
is he going to go too high? Oh, Noah. Okay.
Yeah, he's not one of my guys this year. I've followed along with some of his off-season highlights. I see he shaved his head, and people are saying, "Man, it's bald Derek White mode. He's gonna go off and on and on." And that's great. I think he can. He could be a great player this year, and he's a guy that we've highlighted in the past as somebody that can provide some of those, non-traditional guard stats. Like he's very good in the blocks category from the guard perspective, which obviously can be very valuable. But he's going to be highly overdrafted this year. He played a lot last season, even though he didn't start every game. So I don't see that there is a ton of opportunity for his minutes or usage to really skyrocket and put him into the top 75 conversation. He can be a top 100 guy, but reaching for him inside the top 70, I think there are better options here.
Okay, so what are we in? 7th round. A few nice picks here too. We had Miles Bridges go off the board at 73, Cam Johnson, Trey Murphy, Jeremy Grant, Jakob Pertl, Terry Rozier, Franz Wagner, Tyler Hero, John Collins, Austin Reeves, Keldon Johnson, Buddy Hield. Terry Rozier was your pick, so another guard for you. Are you sort of concerned about his upside, I suppose, or his opportunities now that, well, fingers crossed LaMelo is healthy? But they had a high draft pick. They didn't take Scoot, which that would have really cut into his minutes. So he's. I think the thinking was if they took Scoot, Rozier was probably out of there. They were probably going to try and trade him, but they didn't. So, yeah, look, I think he's relatively safe here. He was 98 last season. I don't know. Is there some concern that he can't sort of top what he did last season?
Yeah, there's obviously some concern there. So maybe this was a little bit of a reach, but we've seen this guy provide third round value for entire seasons before, so we know what the upside looks like for him. As you mentioned, they didn't go with Scoot; they went with Brandon Miller, which was certainly helped Rozier's case here. I think right here in the draft, I did want to get a little bit of help with some 3-pointers. And obviously his scoring is going to be a big deal for me as well. And again, with Ja Morant being out, Rozier definitely, puts me firmly in place here at the guard position until Morant comes back. Rozier, even with LaMelo Ball on the court, can still get me 4 to 5 assists per night. He can still get me 1 to 1.2, 1.3 steals a night. Field goal percentage is not great, but with some of these other guys that I've drafted, I think I can kind of, I can deal with that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Couple of guys we'll quickly just touch on before we move on. Miles Bridges. People have their thoughts, and rightfully so, on him as a person and all the off-court stuff. In terms of fantasy, what do you think what are we looking at this season from Miles Bridges?
Yeah, I mean, we know what he could do 2 seasons ago when he broke out. So he was a guy that was on my radar in my queue here. I think this was maybe a little bit early for him to go in the draft, but he can certainly finish inside the top 100. So I'm fine with him being drafted there. It might be a little bit of a reach, but he does have that ceiling. And I really like the Cam Johnson pick 1 pick later. I think he, after he had a really good last season, especially towards the end with the Nets, I think he can blow past that 74, draft capital right here.
Yeah, Cam Johnson he's one of the guys I'm really high on this season. He was 54th last season. And I don't think he did anything sort of outlandish. There was nothing unsustainable there. So I think he could break the top 50 this season. John Collins at 81. Obviously, he's now in Utah, so he's finally out of Atlanta. Coming off, I haven't even looked, but I would assume it was probably his worst season last year or close to. Is he someone you think can bounce back in Utah?
Yeah, he can absolutely. And when you're looking at a Utah Jazz team that will probably have plenty of minutes to go around for him, I think getting him at 81 here is right in that sweet spot for him. I don't know that you'd want to draft him at round or pick 50 to 60. That might be a little too rich for some, but if you can get him right here, I think that's excellent.
Yeah, I think so. I think in this range, 80, 90, the upside is there to be a top 60, 50 player. So you take a bit of a risk. 85 was Scoot Henderson, Tyus Jones, Jalen Duren, Devin Vassell, Onyeka Okongwu, Jaden McDaniels, Keegan Murray, Jalen Green, Mark Williams, Trey Jones, Shaden Sharp, and I typed his name wrong, D'Angelo Russell. Keegan Murray, so you took Keegan at 91. Really boosts your 3-point 3-point category here. Now, I'm trying to think back 12 months to last season. Was Keegan someone you were really high on? I know someone was really high on him. Was it you?
Yeah, it was me, and I way overdrafted him last season, like 5th, 6th round type of overdrafted. So, it felt a lot better this year to get him at 91. I think I'm still kind of scratching the ceiling with him. I don't see him way overperforming this. But based on the other options that were out there, I thought this was a pretty solid pick. I think he can improve this season. Obviously the 3-pointers, he can score a little bit more this season. So I think he can get inside the top 100.
Yeah, I think so. He was 109 cat. He was 116th last season. And I think we could agree that he won't be any worse than he was last season, especially to start the season. I thought he came on a little bit towards the back end. I think we saw in Summer League this year, as he should be, he dominated Summer League. He was a step above, which is what you want to see from someone like Keegan. So, yeah, look, I think he's fine here. Just one guy before we go to the next round, and another one of these guys that's going to evoke a lot of discussion this year. Onyeka Okongwu at 89. Clint Capella is still there. He's still in Atlanta. Is Okongwu someone that you're as high on as a few other analysts, myself included?
Yeah, if you can stomach the will they, won't they game that Atlanta likes to play, then absolutely. They dealt with that with John Collins for quite a while. It's just a matter of when is Capella going to be out the door, because Okongwu, to me, is not going to be a significant, fantasy option until Capella is gone. He had some great moments last season playing behind Capella, and they were kind of in an even timeshare to end the season. But again, you still have a guy that's making quite a bit of money at the center position for Atlanta. So, Capella is not going to just ride the bench at his current salary. So hopefully Atlanta moves on from him and gives Okongwu, the minutes that he deserves. But until that happens, it's a risky pick.
Yeah. I'm hoping, and there's rumors of the whole Pascal Siakam trade and him coming in and Capella going out. But yeah, I think we would need Capella to go for to break out, obviously. But he was top 80, I think, last season in 9-cat in 23 minutes. So there's enough there, I think, to take a risk on him here and then keep your fingers crossed. Okay, the 9th round. Mitch Robinson, Chris Paul, Robert Williams, Andrew Wiggins, Wendell Carter, Spencer Dinwiddie, Michael Porter Jr., Marcus Smart, Tobias Harris, Bruce Brown, Dan Gafford, and Draymond Green. So you went with Spencer Dinwiddie. You had the opportunity to go with Marcus Smart. He went 2 picks after you. Is that, you mentioned it earlier, the fact having Ja, do you sort of handcuff him with Marcus Smart, who's going to step up in the first third of the season? What were your sort of thoughts here taking Dinwiddie over Marcus Smart? Points, I'm assuming.
Points. Last season's performance, plenty of opportunity with Brooklyn. I thought this was a pretty good spot to get him. And we did 45-second picks, so this was a lack of preparedness on my part. To be honest with you here, I should have grabbed Smart looking back on it, and that's why I mentioned it earlier, because I looked back and said, well, hell, I could have just grabbed the guy right there and really just kind of handcuffed him and been set. So yeah, that was my fault, and just not having up to date rankings and plans in my head right here at this point in the draft.
So two guys that I'd like to talk about. Chris Paul at 98 feels about right. What do you think he's going to do this season? Like, how much is he going to play? Is this is about the right range, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Chris Paul. There's all this talk about, is he coming off the bench? Is he turning his nose down at coming off the bench? Is he going to be okay playing alongside Curry? How are they going to shuffle this lineup around? But either way, off the bench or in the starting lineup, he's going to see probably close to 30 minutes a night, if not more. And to get a guy right around pick 100 that has a ceiling of 10 assists per game, that's just unheard of in fantasy hoops. I mean, you never see guys with that many assists go this late in the draft. So this is absolutely a great pick right here.
And the other guy I'm interested in your thoughts is Daniel Gafford at 107. I know a few analysts are pretty high on him this season with Porzingis gone. The Wizards are rebuilding. So, I mean, all signs would tell us that he's going to start. He could play 30 minutes a night. He was pretty good last season, even with Porzingis there. Is he like, I don't know. I guess when I think of him, I sort of compare him to like a Nick Claxton or a Walker Kessler. He's in that sort of that same group in terms of skill set. I don't think he's as good as those guys when it comes to blocks, but could certainly be 14 and 10 or 13 and 10 with 1.5, 1.8 blocks, efficient, better from the free throw line than both of those guys. So he's sort of up around 70%, not 50. So I think he's awesome value here at 107.
Oh my gosh, man. This was, and again, another guy that I should have just paid more attention to the draft board here because he's a great pick right here. We see Robert Williams at 99. And I think Danny G could be a guy that is kind of similar to Time Lord from 2 seasons ago. As you mentioned, 70% field goal, double-double, 1.5 to 2 blocks a game. With Gafford, his biggest knock has always been the inconsistent playing time, the injuries. But if he can get somewhere in that 30 minutes a night range, I mean, you're looking at a top 20 guy. I mean, if he stays healthy and plays that many minutes, so getting him here is potentially one of the, league-winning moves here for this mock draft.
So if we look, just because I can see them on the same page. Jakob Poeltl went at 77. Daniel Gafford went at 107. Would you take Gafford over Poeltl?
There's no question about it. Absolutely.
There you go. Lots of value to be found then. Right into the last 3 rounds of the draft. So 109 was Jonas Valanciunas, Jordan Clarkson, Markelle Fultz, and I spelt Markelle wrong. Good job, me. Gary Trent, Klay Thompson, Clint Capella, Brandon Miller, Kevin Porter, Zach Collins, Herb Jones, Asar Thompson, and Colin Sexton. So you went with Brandon Miller at 115. Rookies, you're never sure. As you said last season, you were super high on Keegan Murray, and that didn't really work out. Brandon Miller at 115, I think that feels fine to me. Like, I think this is the range where you start taking flyers and you start looking for upside. So is that sort of what you were thinking here? Just he's worth a shot?
Yeah, he's worth a shot. It's fun to get rookies on your team, and he's one that has a lot of upside, I think, as long as he doesn't fortunately, the limit in the NBA is 6 fouls a night, so he's not going to be racking up 8 to 10 like he did in summer league every night. So if he can stay out of foul trouble, I think he's got a lot of upside. It was just an upside flyer pick that I went with. I really like the Gary Trent pick at 112 with Fred VanVleet out the door. I think he's going to blow past that. And Capella at 114, no matter where he ends up, a guy that is going to get you a double-double with, 1 or more blocks a game is going to, outperform that draft capital as well.
Yeah. Markelle Fultz is someone I'm very high on this season, and I've said that on a few shows already. At 111, he was last season. I know he was better than that. So he was 91 last season. I know they've got Anthony Black there now, which I don't know. It frustrates me a little bit, but I still think Fultz is the guy that they want running the point at the moment. What are your thoughts on Fultz this season? The Orlando backcourt is a little bit crowded. They've got Fultz, they've got Black, they've got Jalen Suggs, they've got Cole Anthony, they've got Gary Harris. So there's mouths to feed there, but I still like Fultz.
Yeah, drafting Anthony Black, at number 6 definitely it kind of throws a wrench into things here. But I really do like Fultz in this range. He as long as he can stay healthy, he's got that triple-double upside that really kind of makes you salivate, and especially getting him this late in the draft, I think that's a fine pick right there.
So the 11th round, we only went 12 rounds deep. I sort of and that was more just because we were doing a show. I wanted to keep it short. I'd probably do another 2 rounds at least if it was a real draft. At 121, Bojan Bogdanovic, Amen Thompson, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Huerter, Emmanuel Quickley, Christian Wood, David Roddy, Jaden Ivey, Jeremy Sohan, Yusuf Nurkic, Denny Avdia, and Patrick Williams. So you went with Christian Wood. I don't know. I had questions about that pick, and I think Doc was very high on it. Doc likes Christian Wood, so he liked that pick. I had a few questions, just given what his role might look like. So what are you thinking here with Christian Wood?
I think no matter where he ends up, this is a guy that we've seen can be a 20-point-per-night scorer, a guy that for portions of the last season was averaging, 1.5 blocks a game, a guy that can get you rebounds. He's not going to give you a ton across the board, but is he going to be a top 100 guy no matter where he lands? I think more likely than not he will be, whether that's with Dallas or he signs the veteran minimum with the Lakers or wherever he ends up. So I thought that was just a fun upside pick here for a guy that, we've seen have some really, big fantasy seasons. And I didn't have to reach up or overdraft him here. I'm kind of in that late round flyer type of phase here.
Yeah. And then just before we go to the last round, Denny Avdia, someone that, I don't know, I like him as a late round pick this year. I think with Beal gone, he could, still not sure he starts. We don't really know what they're going to do with their starting lineup, but if he can play 28, 30 minutes a night, he gets good assist numbers, solid on the defensive end, can hit a 3, decent scorer. So he's sort of one of those guys, I think, in a roto format, really well suited to that. But do you like him as a late round guy this year?
Yeah, Grand Slam Avdia. I absolutely love that pick here late in drafts. I think he can really step up this year with Porzingis out. Obviously he would have been much better if Kuzma hadn't signed that new deal. But yeah, Avdia is a guy that really came on strong to end last season, and I think he can carry that over.
Last round, Mike Conley, Stephen Adams, Sadiq Bey, Kobe White, Keontae George, DeAnthony Melton, Javon Carter, Tari Eason, Benedict Mathurin, Jonathan Kuminga, Al Horford, and Malcolm Brogdon. You went with Javon Carter. I like this pick. I think he's probably going to start in Chicago. We saw last season and even the season before from memory, when he started, when players were out in Milwaukee, he was good. I remember he had one game where he went off for like 40 points or something. It was because I happened to stream him in. That's the only reason I remember it. Solid in threes, assists, steals, almost a little bit like a Patrick Beverley, but with more scoring upside. So I love this as a last round pick. What do you think he can do in Chicago this year?
Yeah, I think he'll be their starter this season. And people have said, "Oh, will it be him? Will it be Io? Will it be Kobe White?" I think Carter's ability to play solid perimeter defense is going to give him the edge there as the starter. And I had other guys in mind here. I had Aaron Gordon in my queue. I had Tari Eason on my queue. Al Horford. Those were guys I was looking at. But again, Carter is a guy that I think has a ton of upside, especially in the assist category and the steals category late. And again, this is the fantasy basketball fun aspect here. I'm a West Virginia alum, so I've been following Carter since he was in college. I'm a big fan. My wife and I actively root for him wherever he's played, whether if it was in Memphis or Milwaukee. Just happy to have him on my team here.
And just one guy here that I don't know. I think he's garnered a bit of momentum heading into drafts. Is Keontae George? He was really good at Summer League. Not sure exactly where he fits in terms of in the rotation in Utah. I mean, I think you could make a pretty good case to start him over Colin Sexton, but I don't think they'll do that. But is Keontae George someone that you think can sort of what he did in Summer League can translate somewhat into the NBA this season?
Yeah, absolutely. This is another perfect example of just a late round flyer. You take a guy that performed, as you mentioned, really well in Summer League, a guy that had a strong season coming out of college, and a guy that is in a perfect opportunity now in Utah where you're not entirely sure who's going to be starting, how many minutes are going to be doled out here and there. So I really, really like this pick here, especially this late in drafts. You really can just take the highest of upside picks right here.
Yeah, I think Doc and I sort of mentioned often the guys anywhere from around pick 110 on, you got to view them as guys that you can move on from if you need to. You drop them, pick up someone else. Usually happens. I would say it's pretty uncommon for you to stick with your complete roster for the whole season. There's going to be streaming, there's going to be injuries, all sorts of things. So, I like him there. So that'll bring us to the end of the draft. That was good. We covered your team. I'm glad I didn't have a team to cover because then we would have taken much longer. I will let you go, but before we do that, I know it's pretty quiet at the moment. There's not a lot happening in fantasy basketball. This is probably the quietest period of the year for us, the next couple of months. But what have you got going on over at NBC?
Yeah, so at NBC, we're going to start making our preparations for off-season content, draft guide type of content. We'll be trying to work on that and roll some of that stuff out here over the next month. In the cooker right now, I do have an article coming out this weekend highlighting a handful of players that I think have first round upside. I think guys are always looking for the next SGA or DeJounte Murray, those type of guys that can bust into the first round that you weren't expecting. So I've got a handful of guys that I think have that ceiling. So that be on the lookout for that article here in the next couple of days.
We will indeed do that. So that will do it for today's show. Remember, you can check out all of our content at fbibasketball.com. You can find me on Twitter at AdamKing91. Find Zach at Zach the Monster. You can follow this podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. We'd love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.